And as you know, one of the major issues that we're having locally and across the state and across the nation is the swatting. And it starts with gamers, usually teenagers, online, and they're playing games. And one gets mad at the other, or one gets mad because he lost the game to someone, looks up his address, and then he calls the local police department or sheriff's office and talks about a horrific event that occurred. Oh, I've killed my mother and father, I've set the house on fire, I'm burning everybody up. Whatever they say causes a remarkable response of EMS, fire, and or law enforcement, and usually law enforcement. This epidemic has gotten so bad that we do not do a emergency response to something that is announced as being that horrific. We know by patterns and trends, the way they make the phone calls, that there's a 99.9% chance that it is a swatting call and not a real emergency. Our first fear is at some point in time, because there's been so much of this crying wolf through these swatting calls, that there will be a real emergency that needs a real response, and it won't get the appropriate response. And then there's always somebody goes, so, well, why don't you respond as an emergency to all of them? Because it puts law enforcement officers' lives at risk. It puts fire and EMS life at risk if they're called into the swatting incident. And it puts the homeowners at risk. Many times these calls come after the homeowners have gone to bed at night. So all of a sudden there's this big rapping on the door, and there's this police response. Well, you wake somebody up in Florida, Polk County, in the middle of the night with a big rap on the door, and it's more likely than not that the homeowner is going to have a gun in his hand on the other side of the door, which can end up a horrible event. So we go to the ends of the earth to solve these crimes, and my detectives, who are the very best, have done exactly that. This was not the most difficult one that we've ever worked, but let me share with you the arrest. Here's what makes these unique. Our suspects are 14 and 15 years of age, and I'm going to give their names, and some of you wimpy stations are going to blur it out, but just get ready to blur because I'm going to do it. And they're from one, Syracuse, New York, and Hartford, Connecticut. So I applaud our Department of Juvenile Justice for their work, because they actually extradited them here after my detectives were able to get a warrant for their arrest. So get ready to blur, you wimpy stations, okay? Here's Isaiah Reyes. He's 14. He's from Syracuse, New York. And Carderi Martin, he's 15, and he's from East Hartford, Connecticut. And let me tell you what occurred. It started on June the 4th at about 7:50 in the evening. Our victim, who lives in the Davenport, Haines City area, was 12 years old, and he was playing a game with Cardi. And that's what he knew him as. He knew his name. These all are in the same gaming group. And for whatever reason, Cardi became mad with our victim, and once the game was over, he then created a swatting incident. He called the Haines City Police Department. Turned out it was in the unincorporated area, and Haines City sent it to us and said, you know, there's this shooting next door. I've heard it before, but it's really bad, and my mother said to call. And they're shooting, and they're shooting, and they're shooting guns. So, of course, we went there and determined immediately that it was a swatting incident. So the investigation's underway. Our detectives get involved in the case on the 4th of June and tell the parents of this victim, take his devices away from him, stop him from playing games online, because whether he won the game, whether he and the suspect got into an argument over the game, the bottom line is the victim was a victim because he was playing these games online and made someone mad. that doesn't give them the right to come back and violate the law, commit a second-degree felony and a third-degree felony by swatting. Well, lo and behold, on June the 5th, the very next day, there's another swatting incident to the same victim. This time, the call goes into the Kissimmee Police Department. Kissimmee determines, hey, that's in Polk County, notifies the sheriff's office. This was a more sinister call by Isaiah Reyes. What he said was this: my wife didn't cook dinner tonight. And because she didn't cook dinner tonight, and because she set my clothes on fire as a result of an argument, I've taken a shotgun and killed my wife and killed the children. And that's the kind of bizarreness we hear often. So, of course, we responded back to the residents. There's the victim. He's online playing with who we determined through the investigation as Isaiah Reyes. So we start following this case back. We tell the parents, what did we tell you yesterday? We told you to take your 12-year-old's devices away from them and stop them from playing online, because he is in arguments with people, and these folks, two of them back to back, decide they will SWAT his house. Now, here's what we figure out as the investigation goes on. Because our 12-year-old has been gaming so long, he'd actually created a friendship with this guy. And this guy and his parents, or his parent, his dad, had actually come down here and interacted with the victim and his parent. So they were no strangers. But here's what's interesting. Because of their conduct, they committed this false report of a violent use of a firearm, which is a second-degree felony, and they created an unlawful use of a two-way device, which is a third-degree felony. And they're both of them, which this is what's remarkable. I thought New York, Connecticut will never be able to extradite from those two states. They're going to say, oh, because we think crime and criminals are okay, but you look at the crime rates up there and you'll see they'll never extradite. But I want to compliment New York and Connecticut. They respected our warrants. They respected our criminal justice system. Their system respected our system and made these two juveniles available. And we flew them back, and they're currently in custody now, waiting on court action in Bartow, Florida. But I want to share this with parents. Parents, your kids are online gaming, and then they get in these squabbles and fights. And then they decide that, hey, I'm going to SWAT and create stress and anxiety for the kid, for the parents, for whoever's at the house. This is a very, very dangerous event. There have been serious vehicle crashes with police officers and deputies rushing to scenes thinking they had a horrific immediate event. There have been all kinds of call-outs, EMS, fire, SWAT teams at some of these swatting incidents across the United States to find out they're fake. There's nothing to them. But you risk the law enforcement officers' lives, the paramedics, the firefighters' lives, and the victims in the house that more times than not are in bed asleep when this thing occurs. Parents, we need your help. Lock down the machines. Don't allow them to play games with people across the United States. If they want to play a game, let them play with their friend little Johnny next door, where you know the parents and they know you, and stop this online gaming that's leading to these horrible events. Now, we don't solve all of them because sometimes they're gaming overseas. Sometimes we are not able to determine who our people are because the gamers don't necessarily know each other. Fortunately, they did in this instance. But what's really remarkable about all of this is it can be stopped with responsible parents. And at the very least, while these emergency services are going to, we still go there and have to check it out, but while our resources are tied up doing this, checking out this false alarm, then we're not available to respond to real emergencies, to people who really need help, who really need deputies and police officers, firefighters, and paramedics. All of those units are all tied up. So help us. And once again, these young men and women get it, and the message I want to send to kids all across this nation is we'll come get your butt. We don't care where you are. You'll visit detention and lockup in Polk County, Florida, when we catch you doing this. We would like to have had them in jail earlier. One of them just got here last night. But first off, we have to work through the companies to get the data from them. So we have to issue subpoenas to the different communication companies to accomplish these investigations, or we'd have had them here a lot earlier. So remember, come to Florida on vacation, leave on probation, or sometimes you come to Florida on vacation, you end up in the state prison. In this event, there was no vacation, and there may not be any probation. They may get locked up for a period of time here in one of our programs. We'll see what the courts decide to do. Any questions about that?
Sure. I don't know enough about online gaming to know if there is a mechanism within the game function itself for parents to lock it down so they can't have interstate or international connections to you.
No, I can tell you that their parents have apps, and there's a way to monitor any online activity that their children are doing, which would include games. Or they can simply not allow the children those apps and games and monitor what's happening. But do they? No, because what they're thinking is, little Johnny's a pain in the butt, and he's got his device, and he's sitting over here in the corner being quiet. Let's leave him alone. That's what happens. And as a result, he's gaming, he's playing, he's making people mad, or maybe he is swatting somebody in another state because he didn't like the outcome of a game.
You never want to victim blame, but in the case that your detectives communicated to these parents that they needed to take this device away, first, did they? And secondly, do they face any consequences?
Well, they took the device away on the second event, but not the first event. And to me, the first event would have been important. Now, I do want to point something out, that Cardi's parents were very concerned, totally cooperated, understood the gravity of the problem, and I suggest to you that the parents are going to step in, and there's going to be some appropriate conduct by the parent to hold this kid accountable at home. Isaiah Reyes is totally different. His parents were aggressive, did not cooperate at all, gave our detectives a hard time. Oh, my little darling child wouldn't do that. Ding, ding, ding. Yes, he did, and he's held accountable. But I've got a message for Isaiah Reyes' parents. You need to quit acting like a friend and a defender and start acting like a parent, or this kid's going to have a lot more problems. He's still a young man. There's plenty of time to correct his mischievous behavior, but not cooperating, not holding him accountable, and attacking law enforcement officers who's having to discipline him through the system because you don't at home, you're just a knothead, and you need to be held responsible as well. But at this time, criminally, we don't have any charges against the parents. But it's abundantly clear that they need to take responsibility and raise that young man the right way.
Sheriff, how often do you guys have to deal with these types of swatting calls, and can you quantify or put a number?
Yeah, we could probably get the data for you, but it would not be uncommon to tell you weekly. I mean, it's almost every week. Okay? Anything else? Okay, Channel 10 wanted to know about Timothy Conrad. I want to introduce you to Timothy. He's 59 years of age, and I'm sure you all use his picture since he's not a juvenile. He was on Highway 27 on the side of the road, and he was driving a Dodge Nitro that apparently had car trouble, and he turned on these red and blue lights. Where our deputies patrolling the area see what looks to be a law enforcement officer on the side of the road, so they stop to back him up and see what's happening. They get there. He's got K9 decals on the car. His lights are activated. They find out he's got a siren in the car. He's got a U.S. Marshal's license plate holder. And we ask him, hey, are you a deputy U.S. Marshal? Well, 29 years ago, a guy by the name of Frank Booth in Pennsylvania gave me a marshal's badge, and I'm a retired marshal. Retired. Well, you know, kind of semi-retired, I still kind of work. Well, are you a marshal or not? So he starts this kind of thing, and our deputies say to themselves, Self, this is not squaring up. So we contacted our colleagues at the U.S. Marshal Service. They go, we have never heard of this dude. He's never worked for us. So we find that he's imitating a law enforcement officer. Then we find out that the license plate on his vehicle, even though it's registered to him, is not registered to the car it's on. Bad day. Can't do that. You got to go to jail. And in addition to that, if you've got a badge and you've got credentials, and you turn blue lights on, and you tell us you're a law enforcement officer, there's additional charges. Then he said, well, I'm a fugitive recovery person, and he had credentials as a fugitive recovery person. Well, that didn't work so much either. So he went to jail, and we towed his car, and we took his blue lights and red lights as evidence. There you go. Timothy Conrad, you got to experience the criminal justice system from the inside out instead of from the outside in. Okay? Thank you all very much. Have a good day. Keep the people in Texas in your prayers. That's a horrible, horrible event of monumental proportions. And we all who are in the business can tell you that as horrible as that looks on television, it pales in comparison to what it's really like when you're there on the ground with it at the time. Television can't do it just cause. It was a terrible, terrible event. All right. Thank you all very much. It's good to see you all again.